Several years ago, my wife and I decided to go on vacation, and we found cheap tickets to Israel. Usually our friends from there laugh at this, as it turned out the tickets were the only cheap part of this trip. We flew to Tel Aviv through Istanbul, with enough time for the transfer this time. No questions at the border, so we finally found ourselves in the city. And the first place I highly recommend visiting is Jaffa, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, and the main port of ancient Israel. Walking its narrow streets, you can feel the history in every stone. There you will find one of the symbols of old Jaffa, the floating orange tree, an artwork by Israeli artist Ren Morin. Another remarkable place is the Jaffa Railroad Station, the first railway station in the Middle East. Now it's a museum that captures the 19th century atmosphere. Nearby are the cozy historic streets of the Neve Tzedek neighborhood, built around the same time. And of course, the seaside promenade that is definitely worth seeing. So the next day we headed to the Mediterranean seashore. On the way we decided to visit a couple of interesting places. We started from Ben Gurion Boulevard, a nice place for a walk if you want a break from the sea or prefer the shade of the trees. Nearby, you will find some interesting buildings, including the so-called Crazy House, which is almost on the seashore, where we walked along the edge of Independence Park, a good spot to see desert plants like yuccas, cacti, and aloe, while enjoying the Mediterranean view. Right under it, we found a good free public beach called Oshri, which wasn't very crowded. On our second day in Tel Aviv, we finally relaxed by the sea, swam with the fish, and even built and destroyed some historical heritage. Afterward, we strolled along the promenade in good conscience. Right next to the beach is the Tel Aviv Marina, where we started our seaside route. The walk was long, so we rented an electric scooter to make the most of it. We soon found ourselves in a cozy small park, one of the many in Tel Aviv, having lunch with bread and hummus, a traditional local dish, and one of the few affordable food options, as grocery prices in Israel are quite high. Next we moved to Habima Square, home to the theater of the same name, and started our walk along Rothschild Boulevard. This is a cozy boulevard with trees, fountains, seats, hammocks, and even a giant on-floor music keyboard. As evening approached, we moved to the seaside to catch the sunset and see Tel Aviv from the shore. We took a short walk along the promenade and found ourselves back in old Jaffa. Near St. Peter's Church, you will find several lovely parks. One leading right to the seaside with a beach and a pier nearby. Actually, Jaffa at night was the first part of the city we saw, it's worth seeing at any time of day. This district also has lots of small shops and restaurants with various cuisines. As I mentioned before, I loved the narrow streets of this district. But one open space was especially good for us. At the square near St. Peter's Church, we unexpectedly found people dancing tango at a milonga, a public dancing event. Since we know how to tango, we couldn't resist joining the party. And finally, before going to sleep, we enjoyed the sounds of traditional music. The next morning we took a bus to Jerusalem, the next city on our list. The first thing we noticed was the architecture, which seemed more modern and interesting. After enjoying some pita with hummus and falafel with a great view, we headed to Rehavia Park, one of the several large and beautiful parks in the city. There we saw olives on the tree for the first time. We have a kind of tradition with Dasha of trying fruits right from the tree when we find them, so you don't have to. Of course, we couldn't miss the old Orthodox monastery of the Cross, situated in the park. I bet the presence of a monastery in the park shouldn't surprise you, given the rich history of this ancient city. Our next stop was the Israel Museum. There you can see a detailed model of the old city, representing its appearance during the Second Temple period, also known as Herod's Temple. It was a pivotal symbol of Jewish identity and the chief place of worship. The museum is known not only for its modern architecture, but also for its numerous antiquities, significant to the history of Israel, such as the Dead Sea Scrolls, historical and biblical manuscripts written over 2,000 years ago. Next, we moved to Mamila Avenue. Here, many buildings were built during renovations from the same historical stones they were originally constructed from. After meeting our couchsurfing host, Ahlat, we went to Mahane Yehuda Market, also known as the Shuk. There you will find numerous merchants selling goods and plenty of food.
Oh yeah. You eat that? Yeah, we have it in Russia. Yeah, it's part of Eastern culture, I guess.
I decided to try jaknoon, a Yemeni traditional dish made of slow-cooked bread with various fillings, including hummus. Watching cooks throw the flatbreads high into the air was quite a show, so you get not only bread, but also circuses. The next day, we visited the Jerusalem Great Synagogue, one of the largest in the city. It's a modern building with an 80s interior and beautiful stained glass windows. Dasha was outraged for the first time when she learned that women aren't allowed in the main space and have to observe from the balcony. However, the caretaker let her in. With gender inequality defeated, we headed to the old city. We passed through the Jaffa Gate and were amazed by the Tower of David's grandeur. This ancient citadel began construction under King Herod in 34th before Christ and was reconstructed and enhanced by subsequent rulers of Judea to defend the city through the centuries. Its towers offer a magnificent view of the old city, with all its churches, temples, and mosques, as well as much of modern Jerusalem. After a short walk to the new gate and passing through streets filled with merchants, we dove back into history. We couldn't miss visiting the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, also known as the Church of Resurrection, the main church for Christians worldwide. People come here and place different items like scarves, caps, and even phones at the spot where Jesus' body was laid after his death. What's interesting about this church is that it's shared between 6 Christian denominations, each conducting services according to a timetable. Even more interesting, to avoid conflicts between them, the keys to the church gates are kept by a Muslim family. The church is huge and is believed to stand on Golgotha Hill, meaning it contains the place of Christ's crucifixion and the Holy Sepulchre itself, which is the Jesus tomb, the main pilgrimage site for thousands of Christians. We then navigated back through the street market chaos to our next point of interest, the Western Wall, the remains of the wall that surrounded the Second Temple. This holy site is where Jews pray, as entry to the Temple Mount is restricted for them due to security reasons. Despite I'm not Judaist, I've sent one message up as well. And conversely, due to this fact, we could continue our route to the Temple Mount, where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is located, one of the oldest in the world. Another interesting mosque there is the Dome of the Rock, the world's oldest surviving work of Islamic architecture. We continued through the labyrinth of narrow streets and thousands of merchants until we stumbled upon Roman baths and a choir singing in the church. We eventually reached the opposite side of the old city and passed through the Lion's Gate. Beyond the gate, you will find the biblical Gethsemane and the Mount of Olives, the oldest Jewish cemetery extending to the hill and beyond. According to the Hebrew tradition, the tombs of prophets Zechariah and Malachi are located there. After passing the cemetery, we walked around the city wall and re-entered, checking out the view of the Golden Dome of the Rock and the Western Wall along the way. We then visited King David's tomb and ended the day with a view of the old city at night, with its numerous churches, mosques, and temples. The next day, we couldn't miss the opportunity to visit Bethlehem, to see the works of Banksy and other artists, and explore more churches in this ancient city. Check out the main video on my channel. You may also find a link in the corner, where I show this part of the trip in detail. The day after, we left Jerusalem and headed to the Dead Sea. The drive wasn't particularly picturesque, but when we saw the sun's rays playing on the water of this huge salty lake, it was quite a sight. But first, we visited the Masada fortress. Nowadays, you can take a cable car up to Masada, but in ancient times, the Romans had to build an embankment to conquer it. Not much has survived. You'll mostly see the bases of the walls. However, the fortress architecture with its lower level is quite interesting. There, some columns have been preserved, along with the remains of a Roman mosaic. After baking in the sun at the fortress, we finally reached the salty shores of the Dead Sea. Despite not being able to dive, not only because water pushes you out, but also because it's too salty for your eyes, it was very refreshing. It's impossible to sink in this water. You just lay there, chill, and even may read a newspaper. As the sun set, it painted the mountains of Jordan on the other side of the sea in a beautiful red hue. Finally, we reached the Red Sea, where we had planned to go snorkeling and explore its rich flora and fauna. And let me tell you, it was definitely worth it. Compared to this, the Mediterranean Sea felt almost as empty as the Dead Sea. We were lucky enough to see a wide variety of fish, though thankfully no sharks. After our diving session, we headed to the town's marina to walk along the promenade and watch the sunset with yachts in the background. That evening, we stumbled upon a music festival happening in the city. It was a fantastic way to end our day in Eilat, with great music and an amazing atmosphere. The next day was Shabbat, and since everything in Eilat was closed, we decided to take a one-day trip to Jordan to see one of the modern wonders of the world, the ancient city of Petra. You can find a separate video on my channel covering this part of our trip, so don't forget to check it out. The link to it is right in the corner, by the way. After returning from Petra, we crossed Israel back to Tel Aviv, passing through the Negev desert, which covers about 60% of the country. We spent our last evening in Tel Aviv exploring downtown. It was a perfect time to reflect on how impressive it is that the people of Israel have built such a thriving society and economy from scratch. Subscribe to my channel to see more of the fascinating countries I have visited. And don't forget, the world is not in all these books, videos and maps. It's right behind the door.